Well, first and foremost, you got to have a great support staff. If you have two teams and you're a head coach, in a perfect world, ideally, if you have an assistant, you need to be able to kind of designate that assistant to one team. That's one thing that I've been able to do. If you're able to have an assistant and a volunteer, or maybe two assistants, designate an assistant to the men, designate another assistant to the women. Um, Ideally, that's what works. And most important is players really need to know the expectation going in, so there's no issues. And you really can't concern yourself with exact times or anything like that. You just got to set the tone from the start, and the players will adapt. We have my Hannah Keeling is my women's assistant, and she's really designated for the women's program. And I'm fortunate with Robert McAdoo. He's with the men's program as an assistant. Um, Pretty much 100% of their time and energy is with that specific team. And as the head coach, luckily, I have an opportunity where I can oversee both programs and put all the right parts in place to make sure that we're getting the results that we need, and everyone's getting the attention that they deserve from a student athlete standpoint. And really, at the beginning of the season, we all sit down and kind of establish those team roles so that everyone has a clear cut idea of what each coach is going to be doing, and it seems to work. It's opportunity for me where I've learned over time that the more communication that you have with your staff and your student athletes, then the easier everything's going to be, and the less issues that you're going to run into, especially from a job standpoint in terms of assigning those duties to each person. They want to put everything on a time basis. Like, okay, well, I need to, if there's 20 hours in a week, I need to spend 10 here and 10 here.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that just doesn't work. And I'm not saying it can't work. It just doesn't work for me. I think that, depending on your situation, you need to clearly define the roles of your assistant coaches, put them in a position where 100% of your time is with this team, 100% of your time is with this other team. And then as the head coach, you're basically in a position where you apply your time where it's needed best, instead of 10 hours here, 10 hours there. No, I'm going to put my time in and address my time here because it's necessary and it's needed at this specific time. If it's just you and a graduate assistant, I think the best course of action is put yourself in a position where you look at each team, your men's team and your women's team, and you really see who are the captains of that program, because ultimately you want to have, in order from a head coaching standpoint, you want to have leaders within your women's program and your men's program that you designate as captains that can, in essence, serve as a student coach in terms of providing a leadership role. So a lot of that depends on what type of leaders you have on each specific team, because I've been fortunate that I've had men and women throughout the years that literally have become almost like a secondary coach, because they have such a strong voice and a strong respect throughout the rest of the roster of our team. And trust me, it really pays off if you have those student athletes. So if you have them, great. If you don't, every team has someone with potential to be one of those players. So develop that particular student athlete into a leadership role. And if you're able to do that before you know it, it's really going to help you in terms of time. If you have two teams, you have to tap into every potential resource. And if you can do that, whether it's a support staff on campus, whether it's your GA, whether it's a senior who's been in the program for 4 years, you look at all those variables and you say to yourself, okay, where could this player or this coach or this support staff person, how could they benefit our program where I'm using their strengths as a person? And if you can utilize everyone else's strengths, then it can make your job a little bit easier. Well, you have a unique opportunity because you can really create an environment where both teams really support one another. And it's an amazing opportunity as a head coach of both programs. So it's a chance for, when the women are competing, to have a support system of the men's program supporting the ladies and vice versa. You just add to that support system, and you can never have enough support. So being able to have two teams that are really looking out for each other's best interests can really pay off in the long run. I can use many examples of, national championship matches that our women have been in, and our men who had maybe already played earlier in the day have been really instrumental in supporting the female team, and vice versa, where it's really played a big part in the success on the court. So it's not easy to do, but if you're able to do it, you can really have a super advantage. With us, both teams practice at the same time. So it's a situation where luckily we have a staff in place where we can service the needs of both the men's and women's tennis teams at the same time. And it's an opportunity for those programs to coexist. And it's a situation where, when you have a head coach that's looking over both programs, you do have an opportunity to, save on some things in terms of whether it be equipment or balls or whatever it may be at your facility, to kind of maximize both programs at the same time. And for us, we want both our programs really supporting one another, and being able to do all those things together, whether it's travel together, which we do, whether it's play home matches at the same time, which we do, practice together. All those variables give those programs the opportunity to really get to know one another and really do what's best for the program, whether it's a female player supporting the men or vice versa. They want what's truly best for the entire tennis program, not just the individual team that they're a part of. Looking at the law of average, typically you're looking at about 20 student athletes, maybe 10 men, 10 women. If you're coaching both teams, obviously that number can fluctuate. But first and foremost, you got to get to know each individual on a human level, not just as a tennis player. So when you prioritize your time, you really want to make sure that you know your student athletes. You know what their expectations are in tennis. You know what type of people they are in the classroom, in the community, on the court. Because the more you're able to invest your time into them in terms of becoming better people and only, putting them in an opportunity to be successful, then what's going to happen is they're going to know from a student athlete standpoint how much my coach truly cares about me as a person, because you're putting that time and energy in. So when you have both teams, you really got to make sure you put that time in on a human level individually to really get to know them, and the rest will take care of itself. Well, I mean, that's a situation where from a developmental standpoint, you got to get the most out of them when they're at practice with the team. One of the things that we do to address the individual needs of each player is, it may be during the group session where one or two players on Monday get their individual work during the group session, or another two get it on, Thursday. Or you're looking at your different doubles pairs and you're basically focused in on this specific team one day a week, another team on a Wednesday, another team on a Thursday. You basically got to put yourself in a position where during the group practices, you can address some individual needs, because when you have both programs, it's very difficult to address the individual development, especially when you have two team practices. Can you do it? Absolutely. Can it be done? Absolutely. Do we do it? Absolutely. However, you got to make sure that you're addressing it during the group sessions as well. One issue is time management, and that's the number one issue by a large margin. And in fact, the second issue would be a distant second. And the way to solve that is clear communication. As long as everyone is on the same page and all the student athletes are on the same page as the coach, everything falls into place. And if your student athletes know that the head coach is 100% all in, then they're going to follow suit. So it's a situation where if I'm having to take a recruiting call or handle something with the facility or a fundraising call or something of that nature, and I'm unable to give the attention at that specific time to my team, I have confidence in my team that they know that me as the head coach, I'm doing something to support our college tennis program. And they know that. And if there's clear communication, you can accomplish anything. Each team, our men's team and our women's team, we obviously have separate WhatsApp groups where all the players are in the group, so we're able to have clear communication to let them know what's going on a daily basis. Each week, at the beginning of the week, we send out the practice session and what we're going to be working on for that entire week. So they'll know on Wednesday we're working on doubles, and on Thursday this doubles team is going to be working individually with coach. Whatever it may be, that game plan is sent out at the beginning of every week so that everyone has a clear expectation of what to expect that week. In terms of day-to-day operations, I have an open door policy. My student athletes can come and talk to me at any time about anything, and we're going to address that situation full force. So I think that's, if you have two teams, you got to be willing to communicate and be open so that any potential issues can be resolved quickly and that you can move on towards the goals which every team has. Our goals for the men's team and the women's team is exactly the same. For us specifically is to win a national championship. Each team has that goal. That's the number one goal that they write down at the beginning of the year. We write down a team goal. Every single player writes win a national championship on that page. So we're very clear. The team is very clear. That's what they want to accomplish. In terms of culture, that's something that really changes from an annual basis, year to year. When you have different personalities from pretty much all over the globe, each team takes on their own identity throughout the season. Especially when you're graduating players, bringing new players in, you have new personalities, things tend to change. For our men, I will say we adapted or adopted this La Familia mantra 3 or 4 years ago, and it's kind of taken its own form and shape, and they're a brotherhood. They have each other's back. It's a true family, and hopefully we can continue that. Young coach, I was a young coach who took over 2 programs, and here I am now, over 20 years in, and I still have 2 programs. So I feel like I've learned a great deal. And then the number one thing that I've learned is you can't do this alone. If you're one coach with 2 teams, you must have a support staff. And I'll go through each level of support staff. If you're fortunate enough to be a head coach with 2 programs and you have an assistant coach, you got to make sure that you're utilizing that assistant coach to 100% of his or her ability and making sure that you're working to that assistant coach's strengths. If you have the luxury of having an assistant coach and a volunteer coach, and you have 2 people that are really supporting you and your programs, designate one coach to each team. Have your volunteer or your second assistant with one team and the other assistant with the other, so you can oversee and have that clear definition. And this is possible too, if you're coaching both teams and you have no funding for an assistant coach, it's just you, then make sure that you utilize your support staff on your campus. And every college campus in the United States has a support staff, whether it be for a student athlete, it could be a tutor, it could be a strength coach, it could be a trainer. It could be so many different areas on a campus where you can utilize that support staff to really maximize the student athlete experience. So that would be my advice. You can't do it alone, and don't make excuses. Find a way, and there's always a way. So regardless of your situation, you can find help. You just have to get the right help. The 3 things that you got to have: number one, you got to be a phenomenal recruiter. Recruiting's the lifeline of your program. And if you have 2 teams, you got to put in the time to build your program and to bring the players in that are going to make you successful. That's first and foremost. Number two is you really got to be a public speaker. You got to be able to address teams in a group setting so that you can get your point across. You got to be confident in your delivery, confident in yourself, believe in what you're saying and what you're preaching to your team, because ultimately you're going to be the one voice for both programs. And then last but not least, another major thing is you got to be able to show the work ethic. And to me, it's one of those, if a student athlete looks at their coach as someone that has a strong work ethic, then that's something that they're going to respect. And ultimately, respect is everything. And if you have the respect, good things can happen. And the only way that I've learned throughout my career to get respect is just to do it through actions, and work ethic is everything.